Welcome to the Sharpest College Football Podcast's Conference USA preview. I am BuckMetrics, as always, with Robert Martin. Robert, it is time to start digging into the conferences. We're just, as is our tradition here, we're going right to the redheaded stepchild, our beloved kid that kind of has like a short bus kind of kid, Conference USA, but we love him just the same, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. A lot of people will be like, some people will say, "Oh yeah, we love all the conferences," but like they don't, or they're like, "Oh, we love watching this." And the thing is, though, like I actually love Conference USA. And it's not just because the part of the main reason is because they play games in the middle of the week. So like from October, you get midweek football games. Because if not, you have to wait from Monday to Thursday. Like Tuesday and Wednesday, there's no football. But this perfectly fills that gap for college football, for football through the week. And not only that, but because no one really cares about this, you can get insane value on some lines. Like, this is the thing. Our
Mm-hmm.
models seem to be really good at picking up value, especially in some of these games that are less bet. So in that case, like, there's massive market inefficiency. So like, I love Conference USA because not only do I get to watch football on days where there's no other football, I get to make money on days where there's no other football as well. So that's pretty great. I love that. But no, some people will say, "Oh, it's not high quality." But honestly, if every player on each team is of the same quality, then it's fine. Okay, yeah, maybe someone makes a mistake and gets an 80-yard touchdown pass, but then turn around and get an 80-yard touchdown run, right? So it's not just because people say it's not high quality football. I don't care if defense is perfect. I'd rather see something where a lot of mistakes are made. Oh, that was a big. It's entertaining. I love it. It's great. It's one of my favorite things to do midweek, especially in the fall. So
Yes. And I know up north in Canada, you're a little more egalitarian than we are. Do you guys have the concept of the short bus? We do?
what do you mean the short bus?
Okay. I was setting you up to say, yes, the short bus is the United States, but the short bus is like where the kids that need a little more care in the educational
Oh, okay.
process. Yeah. Yeah. So that's Conference USA. But, yeah.
We don't call it
I tried
so we
setting you
don't.
up, buddy.
Yeah, we don't call it the short bus here. We call it we call it special needs or handicap. So we don't call it the short bus.
Because you're nicer than we are.
Yeah,
Okay.
that makes sense. Yeah.
All right, enough of the short bus and the long bus and the medium bus. We had an idea, and I think this is pretty cool. We're going to make PDFs of all of these decks that we use to guide the discussions available. If you're interested, just leave your email address in the YouTube comments or hit me up on X, still calling it Twitter, at BuckMetrics, and I will grant you access to a Google Drive that we drop PDFs to. Excuse me, I'm getting choked up here. It would be pretty cool, I think, just to have, if somebody wants to refer to it back and not zip through a bunch of videos talking about short buses and stuff like that, just have it handy and circulate to your friends, just see who else might be interested in it. Yeah, I hope that there's some interest on that. As a precursor to the discussion, this is our glossary. Not going to go through it. You can refer back to our first podcast of the 25 season. We'll also drop that PDF into the shared drive too, just so you can take that around and use it as your leisure as well. With that, let's get to the overview of Conference USA. Here's basically how the teams performed last year and then returning metrics and all that stuff, and we'll dig in deeper as we actually get into the teams just from an overview. Jacksonville State and Sam Houston's head coaches left for new jobs. FIU and, really not surprisingly, Kennesaw State fired their head coaches. Two new members, Delaware and Missouri State. And as Robert was mentioning, not to get too personal here, disclose too much, my birthday is the end of September, and usually people have a little blue period after their birthday has passed, but when my birthday passes, it means we have midweek CUSA action, which is awesome. And I just put here, as I grab my laser pointer, I put here just the futures prices on every team to win Conference USA. Any overview thoughts? Are you ready just to dig into the first team here?
Yeah, no, I will say that just one quick note on this: New Mexico State is leaving next year. This is their final year in the Conference USA. They are, I believe, joining New Mexico in the new Pac-12, which doesn't have 12 teams, but that's okay. We won't talk about that today. But this is, I believe, their final season. But no, it's really cool that, like, and one note I will say is that in Phil Steele, I think we love Phil Steele, but I think he's kind of doing a little bit of propaganda and kind of the way he orders the conference previews. And he has Conference USA at the end, ahead behind the MAC. And like, I'm fairly sure if you took the MAC champion and the Conference USA champion, played them against each other, fairly sure the Conference USA champion would win that. But that's all I'll
Yes.
say.
Now you're hitting. Yeah, I agree. At the top, I think that Conference USA is better. You brought back since they are in the final section here, for years and years, this is about 10 years or so, I think we had a streak of 3 or 4 straight years where I just called it the Texas State page, because Texas State was always the worst team, and the Sun Belt was Phil's worst conference at that time. One of the first things I would do as soon as I get the magazine is look, okay, is Texas State still there? Yep. Last team in there. Oh, how fortunes have changed under G.J. Kinney for Texas State, but that's a different pod. All right. We will start. Speaking of Phil, we are going to go in Phil Steele order here, the teams. I didn't want to do any editorial or anything. So we start with Liberty. Last year, they were favored in all 11 of their regular season games. They had one canceled, which was apparently the reason that they completely fell apart at some point. Namely, they were the loser of Kennesaw State's first FBS win. Congratulations on that. They went 8-3, and as a reminder, I believe they're over/under. Boy, talk about what's the opposite of a bad break. I guess if you had bet Liberty over 10.5, and boy, how fortunate would it be to have that bet voided because they didn't play 12 games and they win 8-3. If I'm from more of a global standpoint in Conference USA, of the top 4 teams, according to Phil, they're the only one with the same coach as last year, which is really interesting. Now, they've got obviously a big advantage in terms of resources versus the rest of the conference. Don't know. Are you aware of that, Robert? Like the whole Liberty money thing, like
what? Because they're tied to it's like a religious school, right?
They're basically almost like the evangelical lesser version of BYU to a degree.
Yes, I'm aware of this a little bit at least.
Okay.
I still don't. Yeah, I'm not completely fluent in the entire American education system, but yeah, a little. I'm aware that they're tied to evangelicals. Yeah. And they get evangelical money.
So they get it not nearly in the scale of BYU, but there is a lot of private money that comes in. So they do have a resource advantage. You take that resource advantage, now you have the continuity at the top, within the top of the conference in the coaching ranks. You've got 2 legs up here already. I don't know if you remember this gentleman, Ethan Vasco from Coastal Carolina. There was a very specific moment 2 years ago when Tim Beck had taken over Coastal, and Grayson McCall was, and just as we had really feared, Grayson McCall was struggling. Tim Beck wasn't letting Grayson McCall do Grayson McCall things and rolling him out and using him just to scare defenses. He would just had him in the pocket and not really running. McCall gets hurt, and then Ethan Vasco goes in, and I think he had 300 yards in his first 4 games rushing as a quarterback. So I like this in that you've got a guy that seems to be a good fit for Chadwell. I'd also wonder if Chadwell might have been recruiting Vasco to Coastal before Chadwell left for Liberty, because Vasco's first year was after Chadwell left, so there's probably some familiarity there. Vasco is the number 2 apex in Conference USA, even though he played in the Sun Belt. Just that number, let's be honest here, the Sun Belt is a tougher conference than Conference USA, so that translates very well. What really happened to this team's last year, aside from probably some kind of hangover for that horrible bowl game against Oregon, is they went from a positive 2.6 on defense to a negative 8.8 power rating, and they should have really improved with this really large improvement metric. The conference schedule it's interesting in that the home games are overkill. You've got just a murderer's row of the worst of Conference USA here that they're all getting at home in New Mexico State, Delaware, Missouri State, and Kennesaw. You'd want a few of those on the road just to get to the extent there are tougher games for them. They get them at home. They avoid Western Kentucky, who I think Phil's got second or third. Third, looks like, yeah. Season win total is at 9.5. This is from BetMGM. This is my source on this, done with the dopes at DraftKings. A little shaded to the under here. I think they're slightly undervalued, and I say slightly undervalued. Bettable. If they weren't such a puzzling disaster at times last year, I would say they're definitely undervalued. They went from a machine to really finding a way to not find a way at times last year, so that's a little concerning. I need to show that was an aberration. I think that they're clearly the class of this conference, but they're a lot more vulnerable. They didn't even make the conference championship. A lot more vulnerable than we thought.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's my concern here with Liberty. So, we'll go down here from the top. Ethan Vasco, number 2 apex in Conference USA, only apex of 101. So, literally, we'll round it down and call it average quarterback, right? That's the thing. Like, basically just an average, which, I mean, okay, I guess that's good in Conference USA.
That's good for this conference, yes.
Yes, but, again, that's worse than Caden Salter was. Maybe not for some of last year, but the year before, definitely. So, This is the thing where I don't completely love, I don't love this play. I don't love, Ethan Vasquez is good, but again, the question is, and as you raise it, and I think this is the biggest question for me, what happened last year? This is a team that was completely dominant 2 years ago in 23. They went 13-1. They won the Conference USA Championship game. Just checking. Yeah, they did. They won that they covered the spread in that as well against, I believe it was New Mexico State, right? Yeah, New Mexico State. That was the Jerry Kill New Mexico State game. So they absolutely dominated. Was one of the top, like basically they actually went to New Year's Six Bowl and they got destroyed by Oregon, but they actually went to New Year's Six Bowl. And now we're sitting here, and then we go forward a year, and then obviously then you have that 10.5 win total season last year, and which 100% was completely valid. It's not like an out there thing when they were that dominant. They kept the quarterback. Yeah, 10.5 seems completely fair, but yet somehow they went 8-3, and I think that's an underrated problem. I think the question is what happened. Now they did lose some other pieces. They lost a running back or two. Just took it to like attrition to the NFL, or I think rather their running back from 2 years ago is now in the CFL. But that's not the point. The point is the fact that they did lose some pieces. So maybe we undervalue that. Maybe they need to rebuild a bit. But again, okay, if you want to make the argument that Conference USA is the worst conference, I think it's the second. Maybe like it should be better than the MAC. But okay, you're looking at bottom two conferences here. We're not talking like one of the top conferences. We're looking at definitely one of the bottom conferences in the league. And if we're sitting here and we're saying, like, I don't think it's unreasonable to expect them to be, like, they should be competitive with winning the conference each and every year. And they weren't last year. They were not that competitive. And it's a bit concerning. Now, maybe it's fine. Maybe Chadwell just had an off year. They'll find a bouncer went back. Caden Salter struggled a bit last year, too. Maybe they'll figure it out. But yeah, it's a little concerning to me. And even again, the year before, there was a couple moments there where they looked not as dominant in 23 as well. They still finished 13-1, but there was a couple moments when there were some games they should have been covering easily, and they didn't do it, especially close to the end of that year. So I don't know. I'm a little worried about this team. They should be strong, but there's some question marks from last year that I can't shake them quite yet.
Yeah, and there's a huge difference between losing to a pretty good Jacksonville State team and losing to Kennesaw State. That's what I was grabbing my Phil Steele for. You're a 4-score favorite. That's just absurd. That shouldn't have been close. This is a raw subject for me here because it almost cost me. But Kennesaw State was just unbelievably bad. And that game shouldn't have been close. And I don't know how you did it. They had a bye week and then they had a game canceled, so they were off for a long time. Okay. Maybe that's why you start a game slowly, but you don't lose to Kennesaw State, guys. Yeah, we'll see. I think we both have them almost not as a default a top pick, but something of a shaky favorite, can we say?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. Okay. All right, next. Good job by Phil, I think, on this. Louisiana Tech number 2. Lot to like here that's a little bit beneath the surface, if you ask me. I think they went 6-7. I think they went 5-7 and then were one of the kind of pity bowl bids.
They did, yeah, against Army.
Okay, but that last season, it mixed signals here, but I guess they were better than I think people appreciate last year. Now, the thing that's concerning to me is, here, let's just go through my bullet points here. Evan Bullock, 100 apex in his first year starting. That's really good for a first-year starter in this conference. The bad news is you need that because only Kent State had a worse running offense, and a GGAB of 3. And that's per game. That's brutal. The thing that's a bit of a concerning, the good news is the bad news is that the strength of the team was their defense last year. They were in second in Conference USA. I'm not wild about that because the head coach Sonny Cumbie's an offensive guy, so I always have concerns about that. But this might sound a little weird, but holding Army to 27 in a bowl, Army's going to try in a bowl. There's something to be said for that. That's not too many people did that. They've got this crazy. This has got to be probably the worst back-to-back. They're at Delaware and then at Washington State in consecutive weekends. That's a nice little mix on your travel there. Nice for the schedule in that they get to host Liberty and Western. The season win total is 5.5. The over's taking a lot of money here at minus 160. I've got them somewhat undervalued. I don't I'm not wild about the minus 160, but if I look here at just games that they should win, there's, man, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 6 right there between these guys before you get to Washington State. I'm not going to bet it, but boy, there are definitely worse bets than the over 5.5 for this team.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by it as well. I think they were not a bad team last year. They had a couple of bad breaks. They lost a couple of games in overtime that they probably should have been able to win. And again, that's still an improvement, right? This is a team that went 3-9, and 3-9 in the 2 seasons before. That was his first year. Oh, no, sorry, that was still Sidney Cumby. They did improve last year over the last couple of years, but again, you do look for improvement, and they have been improving, right? So that's definitely a positive sign. Now, Louisiana Tech, not the easiest place to play or to coach either, so not that bad. They play LSU, though, for some reason. They wanted a challenge there. Again, yeah, at Delaware, at Washington State, that's a giant triangle, right? It's literally like a giant triangle over basically the entire coastal U.S., so that's not great. I think they should probably go over, and to be fair, the minus 160 is saying they should probably get the 6 wins, get the bowl. The question is, how competitive are they going to be in the conference? I think they could potentially be if Liberty, and they do play Liberty late in the season, if Liberty has some problems, they're right there. I think, and especially with the conference schedule, right? Okay, yeah, they lose to LSU, okay, and say they lose at Washington State, okay, great, that's 2 losses, but that doesn't matter for your conference record, which is all that matters for the conference championship game. So your conference schedule: New Mexico State, UTEP, UTEP's in there, UTEP, Kennesaw State, Western Kentucky, so the conference schedule outside of Liberty is not bad, and you have Western Kentucky, but outside of that, you have the top 2, but outside of that, it's not that bad. So if they are, they probably should go over, and I think I'm going to be interested to see what they can do, but we need to see some proof here that they're a top team. I think they could be good, but I don't completely buy that they're there yet. I think they could be one of the top teams, but I just don't think they're number 2. Or number 1 for me this year.
This conference is kind of like the maiden horse race where it's, wow, somebody's got to finish second here, and I have no idea. But and what's interesting is last year we saw this as, well, Liberty's got one spot in the conference title game, and there's a nice path for somebody else to get that second spot, and Liberty didn't take it. But that just seems like this and the Mountain West both are just kind of like, because of resources as much as anything else and commitment by the administration, just it seems like that's just the default position of these conferences, is just Liberty has one spot and the rest of the conference is wide open. So I think they're in that discussion. I don't know if I'm as bullish as Phil, but this is a tricky conference because nobody's perfect in this conference. I'll say that. All right, next we get to Western Kentucky. As is often the case here under Tyson Helton, yet another new OC. Zach Kitley now coaching at FAU, Florida Atlantic. I remember this name coming up last year, their new quarterback, Maverick McIver. He had one game that was just nuts, I think, and I remember it was making that national news.
It was that reminds me of the game. It was Texas Tech. It was week 1 Texas Tech.
Yeah, that was it. Texas Tech won, but it was just a crazy shootout, huh?
Yeah, and they against a D2 team, it was 52-51 in overtime. It was insane.
Yep. Him and his offensive coordinator come in, which is the Tyson Helton move. They have a nice pickup here in Jarris Mack from Charlotte. The top, how do I say this? It's the top single, the top single newcomer or transfer in within Conference USA in terms of Ryan. The offense is always solid under Helton. Like I said, he's got an eye for offensive coordinator talent. They do miss Liberty, which is absolutely paramount here in this conference. Season win total is 7.5, a little shaded to the over. If I look out of conference, Toledo's going to be really tough. North Alabama, Nevada, they should win. LSU, they won't win. Saying that they should win 5.5, 5 to 6 conference games. Yeah, that puts them on the cusp. Seems properly valued to me. I think this game against Sam Houston is actually a week 0 game. Does that sound right?
Yes, August 23rd, yeah.
Yeah, so that'll be fun. Very CUSA type. I guess the more we go towards the bottom end of the conference, the more I just have questions about, I don't know what these teams do well. I'm just comfortable with this offensive coordinator and quarterback and this kid coming in from Charlotte. Boy, that must have been fun playing for Biff Poggi and the party they had last year. He's probably happy to be somewhere else. I have a good feeling that the offense will be there for sure. The defense has a lot of work to do. It's Conference USA. Nobody's perfect. So I think as good a shot as anybody to get the second seed in the conference title game.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I actually really like the idea that they did here with the new offensive coordinator and quarterback, a guy from Abilene Christian. So this reminds me a lot of what Washington State did a couple of years ago when they picked up Cam Ward and the offensive coordinator from, I believe it was Incarnate Word.
Incarnate Word, yeah.
Yeah, and they did that. And okay, it wasn't bad. It was okay. Cam Ward obviously eventually became NFL #1 overall pick. And I think their offensive coordinator, they hired the offensive coordinator as head coach, not kept him as offensive coordinator to the college. And he's still the coach there at Washington State, right? He's still the head coach, I think. Or he moved on.
Yeah, he went somewhere else.
I'm trying to remember where now. But yeah, no, I think he did. So it all in all, it wasn't a bad move. It was actually a pretty good move. And I think I guess this is like a bit of a cheat code. It's just find the best, most high-powered offense, take their offensive coordinator and quarterback, and then profit. And even this is where I think there is a lot of value to be found in these obviously a lot of people are going to say, oh, the lower leagues can't compete. They can't get the same talent that the upper leagues can. You can't pull in SEC talent or Big Ten talent in these lower leagues. This is the cheat code they have. You can go to D2 and be like, hey, that guy threw for 5,000 yards. Come play for us, and you get to play in D1. You get to go on ESPN, right? And you get to go to their offensive coordinator and say, hey, guess what? You be our offensive coordinator or quarterback coach or whatever. You get to be on ESPN sometime, right? So that's the kind of power that they have. It actually is like a bit of a cheat code where if LSU or something did that, they'd be like, why'd you bring this guy? You can't do that. But these lower leagues can 1,000% take that risk, but like risk-free, right? An SEC team can't do that. They can't gamble on like a D2 quarterback and offensive coordinator. But these lower leagues, if they scout it properly, there's a lot of value to be gained here. And Cam Ward and Washington State prove that this is not a bad system. This actually can work. Now, just because it worked there doesn't mean it's going to work here. But if you're smart about it, I think it can work. And again, this guy actually has a proven track record of success against a D1 team. He torched Texas Tech's defense. Now, Texas Tech, not a great defense, but still, though, that's a Big 12 defense. That's much better than the defenses they're going to play you're going to see in the Conference USA, right? Mm-hmm. So this is the thing. Like, I actually kind of like this. And I think that if Liberty falters a bit, I think this is Western Kentucky. This is because we forget about it a little bit here, but like you just go back a couple of years here when they were in what year was it? I'm trying to find it. Yeah, it was in 21. That was the year, which actually their offensive coordinator that year is now the head coach of Florida State. But that was the year.
Florida Atlantic.
Florida Atlantic, sorry, not Florida State. Not Florida State yet. Not Florida State yet. Not Florida State yet. We'll see. But no, Florida. That's their offensive coordinator that year went to Florida Atlantic. But that was the year that Western Kentucky was insane. That was with Bailey Zappi. That was the year when they were throwing for an insane amount of passing yards. They haven't been able to get back to that since then. They've clearly wanted to. But I think this is very clearly hey, we need to get back to what we were doing a couple of years ago with that. We need to get back to the let's throw for 500 yards game. And I think that is potentially a very good idea. I'm intrigued to see how this will go.
Yeah, as you said that, the facts fell into place in my head, which is typically a slow process, but I usually get there. After Kitley, Ben Arbuckle was the offensive coordinator here at Western Kentucky, and then he's the one that actually built up Cam Ward at Washington State.
Oh, yeah.
His OC the first year at Washington State was from Incarnate Word, Eric Morris.
Oh, yeah.
Who is now the head coach at North Texas, doing pretty well there. I'll just say that'll be an interesting preview for the Mean Green. So yeah, sounds like we might be a little at odds with Phil. If push comes to shove, we might have Western Kentucky a nudge higher than Louisiana Tech.
Yeah, I definitely do.
Yeah. Okay, team. This is where it gets a little muddy. The Blue Raiders of Murfreesboro. I think they're in a rivalry that's called 100 Miles of Hate. I'm going to vamp here for a second and just look that up. Have you heard of that rivalry?
No. Is it?
Yeah, let me see here. It's Middle Tennessee and Western Kentucky, the team that we just talked about. 100 Miles of Hate. I think that's the best name for a rivalry. Apparently they're 100 miles apart. All right. What we've got here is I'll just say, look, mixed signals galore, okay? This is Derek Mason's second season there. Derek Mason was the head coach at Vandy. I think Derek Mason, not to say the guy's career is over, but I want to say, let's say this. I think most college football fans would appreciate him most for being the defensive coordinator at Stanford that was somehow able to completely vex Chip Kelly at Oregon. You might remember every year Chip Kelly's Oregon's team would just embarrass everybody. They get to Stanford and they get stuck scoring like 18 points. I don't know. Derek Mason was the guy on the other side of the ball doing that. Great defensive coordinator. Did an admirable job at Vanderbilt, but Vanderbilt doesn't understand their place in the world, so they had to fire him. So what really troubles me is last year this team's strength was entirely on the offensive side of the ball, and even they weren't a half team. They were a half team because not only did they play no defense, they could not run the ball for crap last year either. They were entirely just a team whose identity was we can only throw the ball and we're just going to try to score more points than you, and that's it. That's it. Nicholas Vattiato, a 99 apex in his first season as a starter. Good for this conference. There's not many more of those as we go deeper in the conference here. Here's the problem, is they lose Omari Kelly, who was originally an Auburn guy, wound up here, now he's at Michigan State, so clearly he's a talented guy. They lose Holden Willis too. You're losing a ton of your Ryan, which was really your whole identity as a half team. The defense was really shockingly bad. This apex of defensive apex plus of 182, we're getting to the territory that's basically saying you're making every quarterback that you face is looking like Caleb Williams on a weekly basis. That's how bad that is. Now, they should improve. They have a high improvement metric, and like I said, Derek Mason is a proven known quantity as a defensive coordinator. How do I say this? Is it certain to happen? No, but I can definitely see a path where it should happen, where there's defensive improvement, but we need to see it for it to happen. Season win total is 4.5 with the over taking a lot of money. I'm not going to say that this is accurate. I'm just going to say that's reasonable. There's so many questions. Is the defense going to improve? Can they find any kind of passing game without these two really good receivers? I've got questions galore about if you do one out of 4 things right on the field. I don't know. That goes a long way in Conference USA, but I don't know. How confident are you that they can replicate the passing game success of last season?
It's tricky, right? It's if you're this one trick pony, and that one trick they were 3-9, so it's arguable how effective that one trick was. But this is the thing, right? Okay, if the argument, okay, the defense gets better, then okay, we keep passing we keep doing that, then we'll get there. But I don't think so, right? What happens if people can figure out how you're passing? They're gonna have a whole year to work on this now. If they could figure out what you've done, the changes you've made, and how you're scheming guys open, then they could shut you down. And okay, yeah, if your defense gets better, if you're only making quarterbacks not Caleb Williams, but just an average quarterback, because it won't matter because they can stop you from throwing the ball. And again, a GGAB of 18 is not great either, right? So this is the thing. I would say that there's a possibility that this could mean revert. They can get closer to the 5-win, 6-win season, but I don't see it at this point. We'll see. I think that 4.5 is fair. Again, for a lot of these teams, especially in some of these conferences, these are more just, let's go through the games and let's see where we're at on this. Let's see if it's, okay. Like, I don't play a lot of the season totals in some of these conferences. I kind of wait more into the season and then play individual game spreads. I think for some of the bigger conferences, it's easier to bet because you're much more, for example, we know some teams are consistent. Some teams basically are the same as last year's team in the Big Ten and the SEC. Basically the same team. Some of these teams have been completely picked over, and we can have some idea, but we have no idea how actually picked over some of these teams are. This will be a team that I'll probably end up playing in some way through the season, but I'm probably going to stay off this win total. Yeah.
Fair way to put it. A couple of things. That difficulty in projecting, especially when you get to the bottom part of this conference, it's so hard. I have a template where I set up where I literally, my thought process is, what kind of a money line would I need? I do it for when I'm breaking down a team. If I'm not middle, but like the next one, I actually went through the exercise. go through their schedule and said, if I was going to bet on this team in each of their 12 games, if I was going to bet on this team, what kind of money line would I need? And if I was going to bet on the opponent, what kind of money line do I need? I take the implied win percentages based on those two and average them, and that's what I come to the win probability for that game. It's really taxing. It's incredibly taxing in Conference USA because there's a lot of art and not a lot of science. You have to really rack your brain to figure out like what kind of money line you're going to take on a lot of these teams. Which brings me to my second point, and you did make the point about a lot of these teams get picked apart, or what is picked over, I think is the phrase that you used. And you've got a green improvement metric on defense and the offensive line in Conference USA, which does not happen. You're getting basically all of your starters back on the offensive line and most of them on defense. This is why I can't throw it out and say they only ever could throw the ball and that's it and they're going to stink. I think you've got a super strong culture here that you don't have in a lot of Conference USA programs, especially because most of them are underfunded. When you have this many guys returning in this kind of program, I like the culture, so that makes it tougher to just throw him out. It is year 2, good culture. I like Derek Mason. His players love him. How it translates, I don't know. That's what makes it so tricky. And Phil Steele has him fourth. I'm pretty sure that Phil Steele, after a while, you can like backwards engineer into what things that he looks at, and I think that he's got his version of these improvement metrics right here. In a lot of cases that really bump up team in a conference like this because a lot of the stats are bad. So when you get to more of the returning talent, that's going to bump things more, I think. So yeah, watch and see. It wouldn't surprise me if they do well, but I'm agnostic when it comes to this time. But it might be one of those teams, once we get our first set of metrics, they might be a lot better than people are giving credit for. So put them on that watch list. This is where we need to take Phil aside and say, you might want to pass the baton, my guy. Having New Mexico State this high, boy, oh boy. A lot of red here, which is really bad in a guy's second season. Can see it in the first season, not in the second season. So, second season under head coach Tony Sanchez. If you're not familiar, Tony Sanchez was truly just a horrible coach at UNLV. Not that it was a great program, but he really set that program back a lot. He was a high school coach before that in Las Vegas, where he basically got a lot of good players, including even some from California. Overall power rating, 127th in all of FBS. Good job, Tony Sanchez. You know what? He was not even able to capitalize on any remnants at all of Jerry Kill. Doesn't it seem, just looking at this, it seems like Jerry Kill's last season was 10 years ago here. It's horrible. Good news, Robert. They have a new offensive coordinator named David Yost. I don't know if you remember how horribly Texas Tech fans hated Matt Wells. So David Yost was his offensive coordinator. Then he went on to have the dubious distinction of being the offensive coordinator at FIU 2022-24. You know what that includes?
Yes.
The Grayson James game.
Yes.
That's your offensive coordinator. Good job, Tony Sanchez. You never disappoint. New quarterback Logan Fife has a career apex of 75 in 3 seasons at Fresno State. This is a drop in caliber, so maybe he moves up. But you know what? Ethan Vasco's dropping as well. So the starting offensive line. So we're getting one guy that started last year. We have 2 FCS transfers. We have a guy from San Jose State who I don't think started, and then one guy who transferred from North Texas.
Inspiring.
Not the kind of continuity I want here. Here's another one. Just a guy coaching practices across from David Yost. Joe Morris, who was the defensive coordinator at Sam Houston. What did we see at Sam Houston? What happened last year to their defense?
They got infinitely better.
Yeah, literally this guy made their defense much better just by leaving the building. So Tony Sanchez, everybody. 4.5 is the season win total. The over's taking money. I don't get that at all. Now, I'm just saying they're overvalued. I think that they're in for a rude awakening when they play Louisiana Tech. You've got Bryant, which they'll beat. Tulsa is in a bad spot in a total rebuild. Then you get their first road game, their first road conference game. I think that they're just going to get just absolutely shellacked in Ruston. This is the one that really taxed my brain because when you're seeing, I'm very comfortable that they're overvalued. 4.5 just it seems absurd as a blush, and Phil Steele's got them this high. But boy, you try to just put a win probability or what kind of money line price, Just think about doing that against New Mexico's horrible. Sam Houston, come on. Tulsa's really bad. Missouri State's an unknown. Kennesaw State's really bad. UTEP was not good. Middle Tennessee, we just talked about. A lot of unknowns here. It is taxing. I'm 4.5, and especially just if you're going to get plus money to go under that, it seems good. I think I don't know. It's so taxing to actually go through that process. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but I'm comfortable that this is not going to be any materially better team this year.
No, I don't understand why they're this high in Phil Steele. Again, it's crazy, right? Because this is where I think a lot of people will remember former past years and they'll be like, oh, New Mexico State was good like 2 years ago, and maybe you can get back to that, but it's not true, right? It usually takes the next year that's still baked in there, and then the year after that it's baked in there a little bit. There's just that thin little crust of value, and then after that's when it gets killed off. And I think this is going to be that last year. I don't understand. Again, one returning offensive line starter. That's not great. That is really bad. Logan Fife, again, there's a reason why he's transferring from Fresno State, right? 75 Apex, that is among the lower in the conference, or lower than the top ones in the conference. But again, yes, if it's unadjusted, we don't really adjust Apex for conference, but I don't think Mountain West is that much better than Conference USA. Maybe a bit, but what do you adjust it to? 80-something? Like, okay, that's still below average. Okay. That's the thing. The defense wasn't good last year either. Like, this is the thing. You're right. Like, it seems like the Jerry Kill season was like 10 years ago, and it was like 2 years ago. They blew it. He blew it in 1 year. 1 year just completely gone. And again, yeah, like the offensive coordinator, again, it's just, these are like almost purposely bad hires. Like, you hire the offensive coordinator from a horrible FIU team, and then you hire the defense coordinator from a Sam Houston State team who I'm not sure if he got fired or ran out of town or whatever. I don't know. But he left, and then the defense instantly got better at Sam Houston State. So it's very questionable why they're this high. But the problem, though, is I think the reason that 4.5 is there, though, is because of the schedule, right? Bryant, a D2 team. Tulsa, okay. Tulsa's New Mexico, bad. They're gonna be in trouble against New Mexico, probably. Yes. Like, they should be fine against New Mexico. New Mexico will be in trouble against them. Sorry. Missouri State at
just the game of football is in trouble in that matchup.
Yeah, that one's going to be the New Mexico Bowl. I think they're going to both be in the same conference eventually, so that'll be like that's definitely going to be a Pac-12 after dark rivalry between those two at some point. Mm-hmm. Sam Houston is again in a rebuild. Missouri State is literally an FCS team. Kennesaw State is still mostly an FCS team. So that's like basically 3 FCS teams and then 2 not good FBS teams. The thing is, I think it's trying to pencil in that they should beat those 3 teams, and then they probably they should beat the other 2, and then they lose everything else. But I don't buy it. Like, you could easily, honestly, like the fact you get Missouri State mid-season, if they can figure out something earlier in this, they get killed early season, they figure out something late season, then yeah, that could backfire as well. New Mexico, you're getting them in. That's your 4th game. If they figure maybe they can learn some stuff in the first couple weeks, then they could turn around. You're at New Mexico, but you're still in the state of New Mexico, so I think it's fine. Sam Houston, I feel like they're going to figure a way to screw this up. I'm going to take the under 4.5. I think it's not bad. I'm going to bet that after we're done here.
Yeah, it's tough because that's the first thing you go through these other teams. It's, geez, these are really tough to. Generously, they're tough to peg. They did not play Kennesaw State, which is a shame for everybody. That would have just, I don't know. There's always these tests about how good is a team, and I think that would have been just a real measure of were they really as horrible as Backstrom was screaming about as soon as I got my first set of rankings here. Okay, we're watching you, Tony Sanchez, and I'm sure you will not disappoint. Speaking of disappoint, UTEP. I don't know what these guys did. I think I had a small over win total bet on them. I like the Scotty Walden. I liked it in the context of the conference, in that there's so many mediocre teams that it doesn't take much to stand out. And I thought that he brought a bunch of guys from Austin Peay, I think is where he was the coach. That would have gone nice with Cade McConnell, the quarterback, and instead Scotty Walden played his horrible quarterback, Skylar Locklear, instead, and you can see the result was a generous Apex Plus of 53, in fairness, 63 for Mr. Locklear, unadjusted for a conference opponent. But the offense just took a step back, and this is an offensive guy, the head coach here. They're like a touchdown worse, which is just ridiculous. They had 3 wins, which were Florida International, who fired their coach, 2 overtimes, to beat Kennesaw State. Congratulations. And then at New Mexico State, who we just said was literally one of the 3 worst teams in the entire country. 5.5 wins. The under's taking a lot of money, which makes sense. I think that 5.5, obviously the market's saying that's high. I think it's high, but if you go through here, just out of conference, you're getting Utah State is in a complete rebuild, so that's winnable. Tennessee Martin's good, but still that's got to be winnable for UTEP. Louisiana Monroe, that's winnable outside the conference, and then you look up within the conference, you've got Sam Houston, Kennesaw State, Jacksonville State. There's a lot of teams here that they can beat. This is Exhibit A about, where you have to be really choosy to go through and try to figure out exactly who you want to go through the exercise of season win totals to the analytic degree that I do. So I think they're overvalued, but I can't. It's not bettably.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Again, minus 155 is a high price to pay for the under 5.5. Again, you get Kennesaw State, you get Missouri State, you get New Mexico State, you get Tennessee Martin in there too. So that's quite a few teams that you have a chance of beating. Delaware as well, right? So you could see easily, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 right there that are potential wins. And those do come late. Actually, 5. There's 5 right there. Yeah, that's 5.
I gotta point out that if Kennesaw State took you to two overtimes on your home field, you can't take anything for granted, though, can you?
No, that is true. But I think it's not necessarily a bet. Let me see what the number is. Oh, it's coming down a bit. It's minus 145 for the under. There's probably a number where that is playable, but I just don't think it's playable at this exact second. But it definitely is playable. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. This is just wait and see on here. Fair for UTEP?
Fair. I'm not huge on either side here, but yeah, I'm very disappointed with any progress that we've seen here. We're just not seeing the progress.
Yep. All right. This is one of my best bets. Jacksonville State, your champions. Let's just take a look here. Completely cleaned out on the offensive line. Their 29-year-old quarterback, however old he was, is no longer with the program. They lose a lot of starters off a defense that wasn't good. The strength of this team was they both passed and ran the ball well, and I don't think they're going to do either. Charles Kelly is first-time head coach. This is great. Their new offensive coordinator, this is a Conference USA special. Clint Trickett, who was the offensive coordinator at Marshall. You might remember.
Yeah.
As Marshall completely turned around last season, particularly on offense. I guess once Mr. Trickett decided to exit the building. Don't know if you remember this name, Gavin Wimsatt.
I remember this.
Yeah, Rutgers, and now granted, he's a backup at Kentucky, so he's not going to be playing SEC defenses, but a career apex of 37, it's not like he suddenly could be able to throw the ball forward with any kind of accuracy. I just don't see it. You're looking at a very inexperienced team here. One thing that I think, to the extent that you say this is being overlooked at a minus 185, it cannot be overlooked. And it cannot be, there's no way you can emphasize this enough. Rich Rodriguez did not come up in our discussion of excellent coaches, but I definitely would say in terms of a really good football coach, he's completely a made man at this point. Without question, he is, in normal times, had he not had, I'll just say, his situation at Arizona. But without that, there's no way that a program in this conference has a coach that's anywhere near that good. Pretty fair?
Yeah, pretty fair.
You're going from basically a coach who was exponentially overqualified for this conference to a first-time head coach. And there is no way that I think that's baked enough into a number here. I have them not just as overvalued. I have this, and I'm early in my process, I have this as amazing value. If I could outline this down to 5.5, I would. This number is way off. This is the evil cousin of Tony Sanchez post Jerry Kill.
I will. Let me see if there might be some book that is offering alt lines on college win totals. Let me see if that exists. I want to quote one line from Phil Steele here. So, where is it here? I just want to find the line here. Okay, so battling. So he's talking about the starting quarterbacks for Jacksonville State. Battling for the starting jobs are Gavin Wilsat, who started 19 games for Rutgers and has thrown for 2,824 yards, 46%, 17 touchdowns, 21 interceptions. And I read that, and I'm like, oh, did he mean in one season? And I'm like, no, that's in 2 seasons at Rutgers. He threw for 2,800 yards. Oh, and it's threw for he started 19 games for Rutgers and has thrown for 2,824 yards in his 4 years. And I think he's also ran for 811 yards. You threw for 2,800. Now, obviously, you didn't start for all that, but 19 games, 2,800. That's people do that in 10 games, and you did double less than that in the 10 games, and you did double that, and you're like, what? Like, I get these guys have to find a place somewhere, but if you're at one of these schools and you have the ability to go for either a washed up offensive coordinator and a washed up quarterback, or you go down into FCS and you find a really good young quarterback who threw for like a billion yards, and you find an offensive coordinator who also threw and ran for like a billion yards last season. I would infinitely rather take that. Not even questionable. And I don't understand why we're rushing to give these people who were not good somewhere else a job. I don't understand. We're like, oh, this guy sucked at FIU. Let's hire him. No, like, why are we doing this? This guy was horrible at Rutgers and was a backup in Kentucky. Let's hire him too. It's like, why are we getting people like, just because someone is in the bargain bin doesn't necessarily mean that they're a bargain. Sometimes it means some people didn't want them. There are value spots you can find. There's value you can find. You want to find value that was overlooked, but if the market properly assesses this person as not employable, it doesn't mean you should be like, I want that guy. Because clearly there's value there. No, that's not how value works. But that's my take on it. No, I'm going to look for an under 5.5 and see if that exists on the sportsbook somewhere. But yeah, I love this one as well.
Yeah, and the other thing too, it's the same point, but I'm just going to frame it in a different context. Going from Rich Rod to a first-time head coach. Remember when we basically had our overachievers and underachievers, and how the underachievers, I think like 10 out of the 12 were first-time head coaches. Those weren't. I would say you have to be pretty. It's very juicy just to not even be on that list of first-time head coaches, but coming in where your program's cleaned out and you're following an act like Rich Rodriguez. This is numbers and the intangibles really lining up well. So love that bet. All right, this is where things get a little interesting to me. FIU, they got rid of Mike McIntyre. I think I like this hire of Willie Simmons. He has had two conference titles at Florida A&M in, that looks like probably the best number of games, 4 seasons. They got a handful of P4 transfers in. Maybe that's, I'll put it this way. It can't be too terrible because at least there's some guys that came here over other programs. Now, if they were literally the program of last resort, okay, then that's not great. But I don't know. At this part of the lineup here, we're looking for what we can. Keon Jenkins has the most experience in the highest apex of any quarterback in Conference USA, which is something. It's just not a lot to grab on here, but beyond that. Now, how he lines up with whatever Simmons is going to do, I don't know. I think 5.5 is fair. The under's taking a little bit of money. I don't have a lot here. This is just wait and see for me. I think that, I don't know. I kind of want to say I'm more interested in year 2 here, but there's at the bottom of this conference, there's a lot of wins that you can get pretty easily just by being competent.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think this is a good play. Again, they took a good chance. A good FCS coach. 32-5 is pretty good. That's a pretty good record for an FCS coach. And you get some transfers in. Keon Jenkins is the most experienced and highest apex in Conference USA. 109. That's a very small hill there, but it is a hill. Yeah, honestly, sometimes just being okay is all it takes to be good, right? You just need to be not actively detrimental to your team, and you can win. That's how this works sometimes, a lot of the time. Just be actively not detrimental to your team, and you can win. No, I agree. I think there might be some value here. I mean, just looking here, you got Bethune-Cookman, you got an FCS team there, you got Penn State, FAU, so you got some tough ones right off the bat. Then you get Delaware, you get UConn, that's not bad. You get Western Kentucky, and you do have Liberty later on there. But you have Kennesaw State, you have Missouri State, you have Jacksonville State, and you have Sam Houston. You could see 6 wins there. You could see like Bethune-Cookman, Delaware, Connecticut, Kennesaw State, Missouri State, and then maybe Jacksonville State. Like I could see 6, 7 wins if they're good. And again, now Penn State obviously that's not going to be fun, and probably neither is FAU. But you could see a path to 6, 7 wins. So
Yeah,
this might not be some
but
value on
just as
that.
easily, I could see him going under. That's the thing. It just you've got two known quantities, and you don't know how quickly the coach can fix things. This is why it's tricky in this conference. Just assessing them against those in those winnable games. Do
Hmm.
they win them all? It's not impossible, but I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I think sounds like we're both kind of okay. They're like at the top of that last heap in the conference. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. More squarely in the middle of that heap would be the Bearcats with a K of Sam Houston. Really good season last year. Made the Conference USA title game. And then Casey Keeler, their coach, went to Temple. So now they're starting over again. And looky here, a first time head coach in Phil Longo, which, again, as we discussed, that's pretty tough in terms of betting a guy like that to go over. Sneakily, there's some pieces here in the offensive line. You've got a guy that was a second team all conference. You have a guy that was all freshman in 2023, and another guy that was all freshman last year. So that's there. That will go, I think, a long way in this conference. Like I say, a lot of these teams, as you mentioned, just get picked over. The problem is Hunter Watkins had a 48 Apex Plus, which is eighth in Conference USA. I Here's where I'm really concerned. Phil Longo's been great as an offensive coordinator when he's had like a critical mass of talent at wide receiver and quarterback. And when he doesn't, as we saw in Wisconsin, it's pretty freaking ugly to watch. I'm pretty doubtful that Hunter Watkins is the guy, even in this conference, to do it. It just seems like a tall order here. The defense was completely cleaned out. That was the strength of this team. I'm There's just a good storyline there to be continued in a different conference preview. Stay tuned. 4.5 with all these headwinds makes them seem overvalued to me. But again, when you put them up against in who's their lower level, Delaware, FIU, I mean Middle Tennessee, like we said, they're unknown here. New Mexico State, they should be competitive with them because New Mexico State stinks. Jacksonville State, I just shredded, so I can't say that there's no way they can compete with Jacksonville State. This is again why it's so tough to take one of these teams under. You got to be really bad. I think it's no mistake I landed on Jacksonville State because their number's higher. 4.5 seems about right. I'd say probably a little bit overvalued, but I can see why it's high because there's so many winnable by default games at the bottom of the schedule here.
Hmm. No, I agree with that. I think he did leave some stuff. It's not completely like the offensive line is pretty good actually. That's not bad, but the defense is in rough shape, and the quarterback is a problem too, right? We saw Phil Longo in Wisconsin. That was last year, no, 2 years ago. That was with
Well, last year was Braden Locke, and before that, and Tyler Van Dyke.
yeah, those were pretty rough.
Yeah,
Both of those were rough.
and before that, I forget who it was, but it was.
He
I
wasn't
just
there. I
say
think
it's Graham Mertz, even though it wasn't. It was kind of that
he
level
was
of.
yeah he was only there from 23, 24 from what Phil Steele
Yep.
says, but no, it's been rough. Wisconsin not having a couple banner years on offense here, and they're like, let's hire that guy. It's okay, but it's just yeah, I don't love it. I think the fact that there is some stuff there, but again, having a quarterback with a 48 or a 67 apex or whatever, that's not good. Maybe it'll work. Maybe he can get a bit better, and maybe you could do some stuff. But I don't think it's going to be as bad as Sam Houston's first year in the league, but I don't think it's going to be as good as Sam Houston's. It's definitely not going to be as good as Sam Houston's last year in the league. It's going to be probably somewhere between there. I think that's the 4.5. That probably sounds about right.
Yeah, geez, I just again, how would you prognosticate Sam Houston versus New Mexico State? Can would if for just as a little kind of thought exercise, because what I'm going through. If you were going to bet, okay, and that's at New Mexico State. If you're going to bet that money line on Sam Houston, wouldn't you need plus money just to put your money down on Sam Houston?
Yeah, but I don't.
And
It's
to the other side, if you're going to bet on New Mexico State, wouldn't you need plus money on them also in that game?
yeah. I'm intrigued
Yeah.
to watch this game. This is gonna be what day is it gonna be? This has got to be a conference the CUSA night game. Let's see.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a
It's in
Thursday
that
night
time.
game. It's a Thursday game. Yeah, it's a Thursday night game. October 2nd. Yeah, which is a Thursday. Yeah, yeah. It's that will be a fun game to watch. But yeah, I agree. I think you need plus money on either side, and whatever side gets it, I think I'm probably going to yeah, we'll take the dog in that one. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So another wait and see. I'll say this: I think it's more likely that the headwind's going to prevail here. Is where I see it. But just Phil Longo needs more pieces before I can be convinced going into a season. All right. That brings us to one of the newcomers, the Delaware Blue Hens. Since they're a newcomer, they don't have all the metrics since those are only for FBS games. Fourth season under their head coach Ryan Carty. He's been 12-4 in conference the last 2 years. Quarterback Zach Marker 118 Apex versus FCS. How that translates to Conference USA, I'm not sure. The defense looked really competent if I'm just going by points per game, which is a sucker's metric, but I don't know. It's a data point. Competent, and then they have a big improvement metric, so they kept a lot of guys around that were actually getting their first time starts as well. So I think their defense could actually be decent by Conference USA standards. They quite a welcome to the league here. They're at Liberty. They host Louisiana Tech in Western Kentucky. So of the top three, they play all three. They miss Kennesaw State, which is unfortunate. There could have been some great football there. 4.5 is the total. The overtaking some money. That seems about right. So I'd say they're maybe a little bit undervalued. I do see some signs of competence as a program that I'll put it this way. They are way ahead of where Kennesaw State was coming into this conference. I'm going to say from a depth or an experience and returning roster standpoint, they're ahead of where Sam Houston was coming in too. It's always hard like how it's going to translate. 12-4 of the conference last 2 years is good, not awesome. So tricky call. I think they're going to be better than people expect though.
Yeah, you do have some spots. You have Jacksonville State. You have Sam Houston. But outside of that, it's okay. You have FIU, Middle Tennessee. You have some spots, but at 4.5 is a bit tricky. Like you're gonna need something. And you have Delaware State. Sorry, you have Delaware State. So okay, you can get some stuff there, but like outside of that, I don't like.
Let me ask you this:
okay.
Do you think that Utah? I mean, I'd say that game against UTEP is far from unwinnable.
Oh no, that's
right?
true. Yeah. UTEP there. I missed UTEP. So you have some spots to win there. I will say though that you're out of conferences. Like you got Colorado, Connecticut, Wake Forest. Okay, it's very weird. It's an odd schedule, but you're just trying to cram in the basically pay to play games there and get money. Which again, you need that for the program, but that's what they're doing there for that. But no, they could be slightly undervalued. There is some competence here. 12-4, as you mentioned, is good but not awesome. That's exactly what it is, right? If you have a truly elite head coach, that's like a 16-0 or a 15-1, right? But 12-4 means you beat the teams you should have beat. Maybe you didn't beat the teams you could have beat, right? You had a couple missteps, or maybe you just got outclassed a couple times. But if you're that good of a head coach, you probably shouldn't have been outclassed that much. So 118 Apex isn't bad, but it is FCS. Again, if you're looking for upgrading an FCS quarterback, you're looking for a much, much higher Apex. You want like an elite quarterback from FCS coming up. But 118 Apex isn't bad. I feel like that's going to translate to a 60 or a 70 Apex in FCS, probably. That'd be my guess. We should work on that adjustment factor, actually. We should have that for some year from now. But next year, we should do that. But I feel like it's probably something like that. It's definitely not 100, but it's probably like maybe 60, 70, 80, somewhere around there. So we'll have to see. But yeah, maybe slightly undervalued. But again, we're going to need to see this. We're going to need to see how they do against Connecticut and then and Colorado and Delaware State. And then, okay, if they're able to do that, then okay, yeah, maybe we'll talk about them against Florida International, like FIU and Jacksonville State, Middle Tennessee. If they do well against those, then yeah, we'll be betting them against those. But if they get blown out, then yeah, okay, maybe this is. I feel like this could either go both ways. They either get to five wins, maybe 6 wins, or they're going to get 2 wins, right? I'd say there's more likely the 5 wins, But I could definitely see the scenario where they have 2 wins.
Yeah. They remind me of Jacksonville State when they came in terms of just like good, not awesome program. Depth lined up so that there's like Sam Houston just completely hosed their roster coming in. So we'll see. I think longer term, this is a good addition and they'll be a factor before too long. Also ineligible for the conference title because it's their first year and the NCAA has dumb rules like that. The other new team here. This is an interesting team. Missouri State, Ryan Beard, 9-7 in conference the last 2 years, which is rough. But here's where it gets interesting. Nick Petrino, son of Bobby, is the offensive coordinator. And look at that. Their quarterback had a 159 apex in FCS play, as you were just talking about. That's what you want to see. They returned enough pieces on the OL to be a factor. Their defense stunk, and they have a really low improvement metric, which could really be brutal. You put that at when they open at USC, a team that basically wants to throw for 500 yards every game. They might. The Bears might oblige them here. What kind of a non-conference schedule is this? So they're at USC. They host SMU. They get the big three of Liberty. I think, yeah, they get Liberty and Western and Louisiana Tech. All three of those. At least they get Kennesaw State. But man, this. It's a rough conference. It's a rough just overall schedule. The total's 4.5, shaded neither side. I think it's reasonably valued. I think I like the fact that they have an identity. I don't like that part of their identity is their defense sucks, but I think I think they're capable of beating some of these worst teams. I'll put it this way: I would give points when they're at Kennesaw State. Now maybe Kennesaw, and I don't want to spoil it, maybe they'll improve next year. I don't think they have a chance at USC. That game at Marshall is interesting since Marshall has been completely cleaned out and they're starting over with a first-time, or no, not a first-time head coach, with the FC, or no, it is a first-time head coach. It's Tony Gibson. So that, I'm interested to see that one. Maybe just because it's the only real bellwether of their non-conference. I wouldn't be surprised if they're more competitive with Marshall than a lot of people think.
That's certainly possible, and if they are, then I think you're going to see it over 4.5. Again, as I said literally the slide before, right? Yeah, 159 apex. That's roughly what you want to see. That's probably translating to about 100, maybe 110, maybe 120 apex for somewhere around there for a quarterback. So that's actually good. That would put him roughly in line with the top, if not the top quarterback in the conference. So that's actually really good, with the exception, I think, of the one that Western Kentucky picked up. But outside of that, I think that's really good. Again, that is an insane non-conference schedule. To be fair, you don't really need to do anything per se. You're just trying to get these games, right? You get the paycheck from these games. But like, why would you schedule at USC, at Marshall, and then hosting why is SMU coming to you?
That's the mystery here. Yeah. What are you doing, guys?
SMU said we did a road game, so let's go to Missouri. Marshall is interesting though, but yeah, I think there's some interesting plays here. I think we could see some value on them in some of these games. But then they also have Tennessee Martin for some reason too. So like they just cram all their non-conference right at the beginning, and then they just go straight conference down. They have West Kentucky and Middle Tennessee, and they do have Liberty. So they don't have the easiest slog, but they do have Kennesaw State, they have New Mexico State. I can see them getting to 4.5 here.
Yeah, we agree on that. I have a much better feel for this team than a lot of the guys that were in the conference last year, which is a commentary. We'll just say that. All right, and then after the newcomers is, I guess maybe it's just an extended newcoming here for Kennesaw State, considering how bad they were last year. An almost historic minus 27.3 power rating. So they did fire their coach, Jerry Mack, 26-6 in conference at UNC Central, 3 conference titles, which it looks like in 4 seasons. So I think that's a good step. Horrible power rating. They do have a new quarterback too. He was the backup at Georgia Southern. I see a bunch of red up here. It's a ton. Mr. Mack's going into a tough situation here. He returns a lot of pieces that should, in theory, improve on the defense, but man, these are some bad numbers here. A defensive apex plus of 160 and a power rating of minus 13 that's you're really at the end of the spectrum there, guys, and not in a good way. 3.5 doesn't seem crazy. The over lane 160 is crazy to me. They're overvalued, but not bettably so. Just because I'm not going to get in the way of the guy that's got this kind of record in the conference. It's an interesting situation here, given this guy's track record, what he inherits at this disaster of a place.
Yeah, this is you're going for a backup from Georgia Southern. Like, that's rough. If that's the best option you have, that's not a good option. Again, 10 returning starts on the offensive line, also not great. That's concerning as well, especially with a new coach and a new quarterback. I think, yeah, you said extending beginning here or extending introduction for Kennesaw State. That's what this seems like. This seems, yeah, okay, 3.5. Again, you're playing Wake Forest again for some reason, Indiana for some reason, Merrimack. Okay, maybe you could win them there, which is, I believe, one of their only wins last year was... No, they actually lost to... They lost to the FCS team last year, so not great. But okay, outside of that, okay, you've got Arkansas State, Middle Tennessee, Louisiana Tech, Florida, like UTEP, New Mexico State, maybe Missouri State, but then maybe Jacksonville State. But there's a lot of question marks there. The 4 is hard to see. You kind of need a couple things to go right to get to 4. So,
yeah, I don't know who's betting that all the way down to minus 160 on the over.
Yeah, that seems a bit high. I'd say that is, yeah, I like an underplay there. I'd say, yeah, I'm seeing 150 on my book and plus 120 on the under 3.5. I kind of like the under 3.5 there. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, the reason I don't is, okay, maybe Dexter Williams is actually competent. Georgia Southern's happy with their quarterback. We can make fun of that when we do the Sun Belt. This guy wasn't going to play. Maybe he does have some talent, and maybe he recognizes a good coach in Jerry Mack. But it's Kennesaw. There's a path there if the program name wasn't Kennesaw State, and I apologize for not wearing one of my 2 Kennesaw State T-shirts. They're both in the wash somehow. Don't know how that happened. I could see a path there between a new quarterback and a new coach, but man, they were so bad. Just, I'd love to find one of the people who lanes this action to get it to the over such a lane so much, and just say, look, do you know something about this coach or this quarterback that I don't? Or are you just like psychotic when it comes to just throwing money around?
It's like you really question who's like pounding on the door and be like, over 3.5, let's go. Like, it's which gamblers like it. It's like, I mean, you could, I guess, just theoretically just bet on mean reversion, but I don't love that either. I definitely don't love that.
Well, they actually, not them the end all be all, but I'm pretty good at this. Somehow, of their 2 wins, they had 0.7 wins worth of luck of that 2. If you saw that UTEP game, or no, what was it? That Liberty game, they shouldn't have won. That was just stupid. But I just don't see how somebody sees 3.5 and said, I have to go over on that. To the point it moves it to minus 160. I don't know. I'm just going to say I don't know 50 times. I'd love to talk to the people that drove that number. But again, our beloved Kennesaw State Owls, I said it's not bettable, so maybe just in some corners of my heart I'll be pulling for them from time to time until it gets frustrating to watch and say, yeah, enough of that. But they round out our beloved Conference USA. And with that, we get to our wrap-up questions here. First one is, I've had this one in my back pocket for a while, so I'll go first on this. One upset involving a Conference USA team. I brought this up as an example, but I like Missouri State to win at New Mexico State.
That was mine. I like that one
was
too.
Was it? You can go with it too.
Okay, let me see if I can find another one here. But go ahead.
Yeah, you've got they're not perfect. As we said, nobody's perfect in this league. And I'm pretty sure of the functional competence of offense there. And I'm pretty sure of the functional incompetence throughout the New Mexico State organization. And I'd say that's an upset right now if we use Phil's rankings as some kind of proxy for what the line would be.
Yeah. I think it's that. So that pick is interesting. I think that could be one of those cases where we say something's an upset and then it actually closes as like a favorite. Like that, like it would not surprise me if we get to that game and Missouri State's like a 3.5 point favorite.
At that point, yeah.
Yeah.
But if there was a line today,
it'd be, yeah, no, of course, that's the thing. So no, I agree with you 100% on that. I think I'm also going to. We're going to fade New Mexico State here again. I think we're going to go the. What do we think? UTEP. They should be a favorite against UTEP
Wow, that's tough. According to Phil, where is that game?
at UTEP. Either that or Middle Tennessee. Which one would be an underdog?
They'd be a dog at Middle Tennessee.
Okay, then I prefer Middle Tennessee over UTEP actually. Yeah, we'll go with that. The
Okay.
other one I do, yeah. If Western Kentucky was playing Liberty, I'd go Western Kentucky, but they're not. Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. But I also just whatever this. Can I just also pre-bet the Western Kentucky versus New Mexico State spread? Whatever that is, can I just bet it now because it's going to be higher by the time we play.
No kidding. Yeah. All right. And then, which two teams play for the conference title? Well, I'll let you go first on this one.
Yeah, I'm going Liberty, Western Kentucky. We'll go chalk.
Yeah. I don't want to do that, and I want to be different. Well, you just look at those numbers at the bottom. You can just see there's not even like segments. There's just like cliffs between some of these groups.
Oh, is Missouri?
No,
They're not eligible, are they?
nope, they're ineligible.
Oh, that stupid thing. Oh.
Yeah, yep. You know what? I'm just gonna go Liberty, Western Kentucky. I'm not gonna get fancy here.
Don't get cute. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and just as you look at the bottom line odds there, I don't really see any awesome values in terms of bets for winning the conference here. Do you see anything grab your attention about, ooh, I got to get some of that?
I see something on Western Kentucky. I think that's a low number for Western Kentucky, especially if they're going to put up like 500 yards a game on offense. That seems low. Like, the thing is, the way to think of it is this, right? And I actually had a bit of an experience with this just this last week. It was a League of Legends tournament called MSI. And I liked the favorite. The favorite was plus 150. I bet them before the tournament even began at plus 150. And the final came up. Obviously, they were in the final, and they were minus 180 in the final. And they did win. It was in 5 games, best of 5. They won in game 5. Okay, that's fine. But still, though, was the play to bet them as like the favorite, or is it like? Cause the thing is, okay, yeah, you can make the argument that 150 to minus 188 or whatever, not that big of a difference, right? You can make an argument that it's not the biggest value. It's value, of course, but not like insane value. But the question is, if you could get something like a Western Kentucky, like if Western Kentucky and Liberty are playing in the final, what does the season look like? If Western Kentucky has this high-powered offense, is the line? If the line's 2.5, and it's minus 150, what would it be? Minus 150 plus 120 for Western Kentucky. So you're getting plus 150 to minus 150 isn't huge, but a plus 400 to plus 120 is huge. That's a huge difference. So I think you could think of it more that way, as the fact that if you're betting on the second team, because they hedge your value in that case, then I think you'd rather have that second team than is my take on it.
Yeah, yeah. Yep. Okay. So that is Conference USA. Our next preview will be the Mountain West coming out in a few days. So thank you all for watching, listening, and if you do want access to the PDFs of our previews, just get in touch and we'll get those. We'll get some access to you. Robert, I will see you in a few days on the Mountain West, and everyone else, we will talk to you then. Until then, farewell.
See ya.